I'm Aaron Porras, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the Shin Bet security services fight against ISIS recruitment. The Israeli government meets to discuss closing the Qatar-owned Al-Jazeera Newsdesk in Israel. And an Israeli biotech firm has found a healthy new use for tobacco. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. When 3 Arab Israeli teenagers secretly swore allegiance to the Islamic State, they probably didn't expect the Shin Bet security services to come knocking on their doors. The Shin Bet just announced that it has arrested the 3 suspects in the northern Israeli town of Biotech. Apparently, the 3 youths had been in communication with the Islamic State agents abroad, and one of them had even discussed traveling to the Caliphate to fight with the terror group. Around 50 Arab citizens of Israel have gone to join the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq over the last few years, a number that actually compares favorably to many European countries with substantial Muslim minorities. But while Daesh does not have a strong base in Israel, the Shin Bet sees Israeli Arab supporters of Daesh who make contact with the operatives of the organization and go fight in its ranks to be a grave security threat. The junior jihadis had even reportedly made an improvised explosive device, and 2 of the suspects are 17 and 1 is 18. Because of their age, the security services are not releasing their names. Now, following the Israeli Prime Minister's calls for Unra to be dismantled, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is now firing back, rallying support from all other member states to continue supporting the refugee relief program.
Unra, or the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East, was created in 1949 to provide employment and public work projects to the 5 million registered Palestinian refugees and their descendants from the 1948 War of Independence. It was later revitalized for those expelled during the Six-Day War in 1967. Today, UNRWA is charged with providing services like education, healthcare, and social services. The organization has often come under criticism over the past few years, however, amid accusations of corruption, politicization, support and incitement to terrorism, and more. An independent UN inquiry found that terrorist groups in Gaza had hidden weapons in at least 3 UN-run school buildings in Gaza, for example, and had at least in 2 of those schools fired rockets into Israel during the war of 2014, known as Operation Protective Edge. Most recently, a Hamas terror tunnel was uncovered underneath an UNRWA school by some of the employees. This is what prompted Netanyahu's calling for it to be finally dismantled in the first place.
In other United Nations-related news, a UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Zeid Ra'ad al-Hussein, is also not happy, both with the Israeli government and the Palestinian Authority. In a recently published report, al-Hussein criticized both the Israeli and Palestinian governments for their non-compliance with international calls for accountability. He goes on to call for each of the 2 parties to conduct prompt, impartial, and independent investigations of all alleged violations of international human rights, law, and all allegations of international crimes.
In a statement made last week on the 50th anniversary of the 1967 Six-Day War, al-Hussein's comments focused primarily on Israel's control of the West Bank, though he did mention that Israelis have suffered grievously from Palestinian attacks as well. What he forgot to make mention of was the fact that Israel has complied with many independent investigations already.
The Palestinians deserve freedom, as all peoples do. They deserve to bring up their children safe in their homes, on their land, exercising their rights in their state, free from this long and bitter occupation. The Israelis also deserve freedom, a different sort of freedom, for they have long had their state, but they too have suffered grievously. The Israeli people have long endured unlawful attacks against their own civilian population, attacks which are often vicious, in clear violation of international humanitarian law, and also worthy of condemnation. Israelis too need to be free from this violence, from any existential threat posed to them. The sine qua non for peace, the end of the occupation, must now be brought about, and soon. Maintain the occupation, and for both peoples there will only be a prolongation of immense pain, the endless flow of ajaz and shivers, the weeping by loved ones for loved ones, the prayers, the curses, the hatreds and vengeance, the impossibility of a secure life for all. This can be ended.
We've all been following the clash between Qatar and the Sunni bloc of Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and their allies, but now there's talk in Israel of closing Al-Jazeera, the Qatari-based news network. ILTV correspondent Max Keisler is here with the story. Max, what is the case against Al-Jazeera?
Well, the issue isn't that Al-Jazeera is slanted against Israel. You could say that about a lot of media outlets here, and that's not enough to shut them down. But security, that's an issue.
So you're telling me that the issue is that Al-Jazeera is a security threat?
Maybe. I mean, the onus would be on the government to prove that, but given that Al-Jazeera is owned by Qatar, and Qatar is very close to Hamas, they're its main patron, and they're very close to Iran, which sponsors Hezbollah, they might be able to use the military gag order to get Al-Jazeera out of Israel. And now that Jordan and Saudi Arabia are closing their Al-Jazeera offices, now might be a politically expedient time to do that.
Okay, well, you make some good points. Let's see the rest in your report.
Following the closure of Al Jazeera press bureaus in Saudi Arabia and Jordan, Israel might follow the Sunni state's lead. Yesterday, Prime Minister Netanyahu held a meeting with the Shin Bet security service, the Defense Ministry, and other offices to look into the possibility and legality of shutting down the Qatari-owned news agency. Many view Al Jazeera as essentially state propaganda. Its fiercely critical coverage of Arab nationalist governments and Sunni monarchies contrasts strongly with its favorable coverage of Islamist organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. Not coincidentally, this pro-Islamist line matches Qatari foreign policy. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman is attacking Al Jazeera as an incitement machine, pure propaganda in the style of Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia. He's also saying that in all his years following the station, he's never once seen a story against Iran. But there are legal questions about shutting down Al Jazeera. Most of its employees are Israeli citizens, and their right to work in legal businesses is protected by Israel's basic law. Additionally, an Al Jazeera appeal to the High Court of Justice would further delay its closure. But Al Jazeera's bias won't be enough for Israel to shut it down. The government will have to show that there are real security concerns. Qatari links to Hamas and Iran, Hezbollah's sponsor, just might be enough.
Israeli plans to build an artificial island port off the coast of Gaza are being held up by the Defense Ministry on security grounds, and some of the new government just doesn't understand what the problem is.
For 6 years, Intelligence and Transportation Minister Israel Katz of the Likud party has been pushing for the construction of an artificial island off the coast of the Gaza Strip. He says its $5 billion cost will be covered by foreign donations, and its security will be tight. Most of all, foreign ministry personnel will be able to go around the world showing a positive Israeli initiative for the hardest spot in the region. But at a security cabinet meeting Sunday night, Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman's opposition to the plan stopped the cabinet from coming to a decision. Katz says he showed the ministers at the meeting a 2.5-minute video about the logistics of the port, including security inspections. According to officials who were briefed on the meeting, Education Minister Naftali Bennett, Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked, Energy Minister Yuval Steinitz, and others all supported the idea. Lieberman, however, expressed concerns that it would be impossible to conduct effective security checks that could prevent arms smuggling. Additionally, he believes that anyhow, any Israeli aid to Gaza should be conditioned on the disarming of Hamas and other terrorist groups.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be skipping the Emet Prize ceremony this year in protest against one of the attending laureates. The Emet Awards are a special occasion in Israel bringing attention to the nation's best and brightest in art, science, and culture. The award ceremony, however, is typically hosted under the auspices of the Prime Minister's office, and so it's a pretty big deal that Netanyahu won't be there. Joining me now to dig deeper is Naftali Ben-Simon, a former journalist at the Israel Broadcasting Company and a candidate in the upcoming Likud primaries. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
So first of all, who is Oded Kotler? Tell me who this is and why he's so controversial.
Personally, he's a great actor. He's one of the main people who really are the heart of the Israeli theater. As a mentor, as an actor, as someone who really contribute, and as a child, I admired him. But he received a Met reward, but in 2 years ago, or last year, he just said that all the voters of the Likud party are kind of cows.
He called all the Likud voters cows.
That follow cattle or something like that, that follow Netanyahu.
Yeah.
That was very insulting. And today Netanyahu decided to skip and to say, okay, he married the prize, the reward, but I will not participate this show because I was personally insulted. And he should be insulted, the Prime Minister, because he's representing 1 million voters of the Israeli public, and they were also insulted. So, you know, freedom of speech, freedom of everything is okay in Israel, and we have it,
right,
but not freedom to insult such a large group.
The thing is, you know, as the Prime Minister, he represents more than just his voters. He represents the Israeli government. So isn't it kind of his job to kind of look past that, be the bigger man, and show up at the award ceremony where he's expected?
We can say that in one hand, but in the other hand, it's a statement. It's a statement to a very close club, maybe a social club or unsocial club, the theater in Israel and the movies industry and everything, that you have some limits, red lines, and we have some red lines that we're not touching people in a way that can insult them. I can tell you that I know Netanyahu for a very long time. I never saw him insulting once in his life someone or a group or someone personally. So I think this is something that to put a border on things that are not, it's not the freedom of speech that we are stopping. It's just saying that, well, guys, enough is enough. We have people who are very affected from what you said.
All right, now in a related topic, we have Miri Regev, our culture minister, who has pulled funding from various cultural institutions such as the Al-Midan Theater in Haifa. Now, are these types of decisions that she's been making, are they kind of based on political reasoning, or is that, you know, is there more to that? Is this censorship?
Why? Well, censorship, it's a big word, and we are far from it. And to be honest, it's the one of the most free country, free of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of almost everything. But in the same time, having said that, Miri Regev, the Minister of Culture, decided not to be an ATM machine for funding theater plays, but also to ask questions and to say if it's appropriate, yes or not. And she never ban or she never say, okay, that will not be the play, but she said that will not be funding by national budget. This is a big difference.
That being said, you know, what role does the government have in censoring artistic expression and you know, freedom of expression and speech? You know, we had, for example, recently there were a number of shows that she refused to fund, again with public dollars, fair, but refused to fund them because they had nudity in them. Now the shows were expressly stating in the guide that they had nudity, that they were only for an adult audience. Why is it still her job to police, you know, as an adult, my decision to go and see a show like that?
She, let's be correct, she said that in very specific shows, she preferred not to be funding them by national budget. But Israel government is giving a lot of money to Israel Festival and in whole. And so it's not... we are generalizing, and we are, you know, we say some things that maybe in the world are censorship or maybe the end of Israeli democracy. We are far from that.
Far from that.
Let's be relaxed, everyone. And we are a strong democracy. We have differences. We have some arguments. We have some points of view. But this is not the end of democracy.
Yeah, we're free to make those points. All right, well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Ben Simon, thank you. All right, now Israel is going ahead with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's demands to cut off electricity to the Gaza Strip, but good old Egypt is offering to help Hamas out at a cost.
As the Palestinian Authority paid only around 62% of its electricity bill this month, they requested that Israel cut off the Gaza Strip for most of its electricity. Abbas, the leader of the Fatah party, is seeking to pressure Hamas. Currently, Israel is supplying enough electricity to provide Gaza with around 6 hours of electricity per day. They could now be looking at half that. According to Israel, though, the people of Gaza are aware that this is a Palestinian dispute.
אני חושב שפעם ראשונה שבתוך האוכלוסיית עזה יש מודעות לכך שהמשבר האחרון הוא לא קשור לישראל. הוא קשור למאבק בין פתח לבין חמאס, הוא קשור למאבק בין אבו מאזן ליחיא סנוואר.
نحن في حكومة الوفاق الوطني نجدد دعوتنا إلى حركة حماس وسلطة الأمر الواقع هناك بتسليمنا كافة المؤسسات الحكومية في قطاع غزة حتى تستطيع الحكومة أن تقدم أفضل ما لديها بما يليق بأهلنا وشعبنا وتضحياتهم في قطاعنا الحبيب.
Hamas, on the other hand, disagrees.
هذا القرار قرار خطير تداعياته خطيرة على حياة 2 مليون فلسطيني في القطاع سوف يمس بكافة مناحي الحياة الإنسانية والاجتماعية والبيئية والصحية منها وبالتالي الأوضاع في قطاع غزة صعبة للغاية. هذا القرار المجحف من قبل الكنيست والذي يعني تحاسب عليه الشرائع والقوانين الدولية سوف يسرع في تدهور الحالة في قطاع غزة على كافة المستويات والذي سوف يتحمل مسؤولية هذا التدهور الخطير في الوضع في قطاع غزة هي حكومة الاحتلال الإسرائيلي تحاصر قطاع غزة منذ أكثر من 10 سنوات.
Now, Egypt is offering to provide Hamas with 25 megawatts of power, a lot less than the 125 megawatts a day Israel supplies to Gaza, but still something. In exchange, they want Hamas to hand over 17 men wanted by Cairo on charges of terrorism, an end to weapons smuggling into the Sinai, and better policing by Hamas of the Gaza-Egypt border. Hamas chief Yahya Sinwar received the list of demands during his trip to Cairo. Now we'll just have to wait and see what he does with it.
5 letters from the great Albert Einstein are going to auction next week, and one of them is shedding light on just why the Zionist physicist declined the Israeli presidency.
The letters, written between 1951 and 1954, were written to Einstein's colleague David Bohm, a blacklisted quantum physicist who fled the United States after being called to testify to the House Un-American Activities Committee over his ties to communism. Bohm was unhappy in his refuge of Brazil, but Einstein advised him against immigrating to the new state of Israel. He wrote, "Israel is intellectually active and interesting, but has very narrow possibilities, and to go there with intention to leave on the first occasion would be regrettable." Einstein was offered the Israeli presidency in 1952, an offer he declined. He did, however, leave his papers to the Hebrew University in his will. Despite Einstein's advice, Bohm did move to Israel in 1955, where he met his wife Sarah Wolfson. In 1957, they moved to the UK. Sarah Bohm returned to Israel after her husband's death in 1992, and her estate has just now put up the Einstein-Bohm letters for auction. They're expected to sell for over $20,000.
Now, we all know how stressful it can be to plan the perfect family vacation. Well, one new startup here in Israel has just made it a whole lot easier to plan the ultimate getaway. Joining me today in the studio is Asaf Toker, the CEO and co-founder of Sivuv. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
All right, thank you. All right, now my first question for you is, what is Sivuv exactly? What do you do?
Well, we actually developed a video-based trip planner, meaning that instead of reading material, you can just log into our site, look on videos on your destination, select point of interest when you see a good one and you'd like to go for it. And once you're done with all your trip selection, the system basically plan the trips for you.
How was this idea inspired? How did
Well,
this come about?
I'm a physician.
Okay.
I love to travel, and I met Yossi, who is our CTO, who also loves to travel. And he came up with the idea, and we joined forces, and we're going for it.
And it was just like that. I mean, you said, hey, I like to travel, you like to travel, let's make a travel app?
It's a little bit more complicated. We know that video is taking a much higher part in trip planning. Mm-hmm. We know that in 2016, there were 49 billion views on YouTube on videos that are related to travel. And 64% out of those views were from people that were actually planning a trip. So it's a huge market, and we are planning to be there.
That's incredible. So how many countries and cities are featured on Sivuv?
Currently, we have 40 cities, but since our system is automatically running, we are adding more and more cities every day.
Your system is indexing them on its own?
We have a platform that actually knows how to bring movies. Once the movie is in, there is another system of video processing and image analysis that actually looks at the video and tags the points of interest in the movie. So since most of it is automatically, it's quite fast to upload the city.
That's amazing. So when you're clicking on these things, what then? Does it take you to a link where you can book things, where you can, is there a peer-to-peer aspect to it?
So,
Tell me a little bit more about the app.
Once you have all your destinations selected, the system, through a set of algorithms, know how to plan the trip ideally for you. And it also recommends for you a flight and a hotel in the destination.
So you partnered with like Orbit and
we're partnering with
well?
Skyscanner and Booking currently.
That's incredible.
And at the end, we want it to be a social network of video-based trip planning. We want people to use our application when they're traveling, take a video of a good restaurant that they had a great dinner, upload it to our system, and then other people that have the similar characteristics will be able to see the same movies and plan their trip through it.
Well, that's amazing. All right, so tell me, here's the big question for all the apps, right? The hardest thing, what's next? What's on the horizon?
So we're now done with our beta testing, and the system is open. You can log in to www.seevoov.com and plan your trips. We plan to finalize the application in about 3 months, and hopefully get enough traffic to get more funding and start the system.
Well, I know that there are lots and lots of people who love to travel, probably as much or more than you do or I do, and so I see nothing but success. Thank you so much for coming in. It's an amazing idea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, now if you've ever flown to Israel, you may well have made a connection in Frankfurt International Airport. With 293 different destinations, it has the most direct flights to any airport in the world. And now it'll be even more accessible to Israel.
The German national carrier Lufthansa has announced that it's adding 5 weekly flights between Israel and Germany. Lufthansa Israel manager says that they've upped the schedule because Israelis want more connection flights to ski resorts in Europe, as well as connections to long-haul destinations. There's also strong demand for flights from Germany to Israel, as Tel Aviv is rapidly becoming a tourist hotspot for Germans drawn to its trance and deep house music scene. If the 31 flights a week from Munich and Frankfurt weren't enough, 36 ought to do the trick.
It sounds like something from an Arthur C. Clarke novel, but I assure you it's real. An Israeli biomed firm is using tobacco leaves to make 3D printed organs. CollPlant has just established a new division to 3D print organs and tissues, and their proprietary collagen-based bio-ink is the key building block. According to the CEO Yechiel Tal, CollPlant is taking locally grown tobacco leaves, extracting the collagen, and using it to make a bio-ink that they're calling RH Collagen. Tal says that the ink has a high safety profile and does not cause an immunological reaction. Apparently, the collagen in tobacco plants closely resembles that of the collagen in human beings. If the product works as well as they're forecasting, it could be a lifesaver for the millions worldwide on waiting lists for organ transplants. By 2022, the 3D bioprinting market is expected to total $1.8 billion, and as the technology develops, it could keep growing exponentially.
Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. We just heard about just one of the amazing new advances in the world of 3D printing. So today, the Hebrew word is hadpasa, meaning a print. Just as in English, a hadpasa refers both to something that came out of a stereotypical printer, a 3D printer, and artistic prints like through lithography. Hadpasot, or prints, being capable of being both mass-produced and or personally processed then, are very curious things. Kind of like human beings, really. We're all made similarly, some even identically. But no matter how much we may look alike, we are all different and special in some way. Side note, hadpasa or printmaking in this context is really hard, so don't forget to support your local artists. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be partly cloudy with a low of 70 or 21 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect more clouds and a chance of light rain with a high of 83 or 28 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.54 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Aaron Porras, and thanks for watching.